Thank you, Ian. I now realise that I should have signed a non-disclosure agreement myself, so that I understand right here. You're about to discover over the next few minutes that it's 15 years since I last did a presentation. And, probably at least 15, if not longer, since I last used PowerPoint. We'll have to see how it goes. So what I want to do is to update you about some things that have been happening between Hewlett Packard on the one hand and some of the digital pensioner community in their uniforms here on the other. Now, it may be 15 years since I did a presentation. It's probably also 15 years since we last received what I term a decent increase to our pensions from Hewlett Packard, 14 or 15 years. So this, as I'm sure you all know, has created a certain amount of, disturbance or whatever in some people's minds, not necessarily everybody. And it's something that I've become a little bit more heavily involved in myself over the last year or two. What I'm talking about here goes into a certain amount of detail. I'm not a pensions expert. Everything I know, I've learned through Googling it and reading it. And if you get a pencil and write down some of the keywords yourselves here tonight, guess what? Using your device of choice, and your search engine of choice, you can find all these interesting articles, stories, wherever else, and become as expert as I am yourself within probably a week. Also, I should say that when any statements or references to data I make are made referencing information that's in the public domain. So if there are certain situations, whatever, that we're not allowed to talk about at this point in time, they're not referenced. Everything I talk about is in the public domain. In one particular case, I'll be drawing heavily on a complaint that went all the way up to the Ombudsman. That was made by Nigel Baines, formerly of the Law Department. And I can talk about that. It's on the Ombudsman's website, it's in the public domain, and I can quote freely from that. Anything else I say, it's written cunningly along the bottom here. Anything else I say that appears to be a statement, an opinion, wherever else, is purely an opinion. It's not meant to be slanderous, libelous, offensive, or anything of that particular nature. Anybody who feels slandered, libeled, offended, or whatever, well, sorry, see me afterwards. I might apologise. So, if I press this slide button forward, gosh, it works. I'm sure we all remember this particular exciting Building a Secure Future. And, you know, I've read that book several times over the last couple of years. I see nothing in it that is in any way misleading. I see lots of good things. I see that, I know that we all subscribed to what we believed was going to be a secure future. And it's not necessarily that our future is necessarily wholly insecure at this point in time, but I would say to you quite frankly, it's not what we signed up for. It's not what we thought we would get. There's a bit missing. And it's illustrated quite nicely with the infamous COLA chart. I always call this chart not the COLA chart. This to me is the honey they shrunk my pension chart. Now you won't be able to see the numbers unless you've got particularly good eyesight. But,
John, could you speak up a bit?
Yeah.
The people at the back can't quite hear.
Okay. You won't be able to. You can hear me now, can you? Yeah. You may not be able to see the numbers unless you've got particularly sharp eyesight. But these three strategically placed arrows do the trick. This indicates the starting point, which we usually call 100. This indicates where we might be if we had received RPI level increases to our pensions over the last 20 or since 1990. And this indicates roughly where we are. And the numbers there would be 100, 220, and about 150. So on that basis, you might think we're a little bit short of where we thought we were going to be. Okay? And you can see that under digital, there were steady rises, building a secure future. Under contract, there were steady rises, building a secure future. Under Hewlett Packard, it's kind of plateaued out. There are reasons for that. I'll go into them. And everybody has their own version of the story. I'm just giving you my opinion. Now, in order to get to telling you where we're at, can you hear me at the back still? Yep.
It's difficult.
Okay, I'll shout. In order to get to where we're at and where we think we're going, it's necessary to actually look back. A lot of you may know this, for which I apologise. I'm also conscious that I may be talking to a cross-functional audience. If I was doing this presentation 25 or 30 years ago when we were all in digital, I'd be very worried that it might be far too detailed for my sales colleagues and not detailed enough for those friends in software services and consulting. So bear with me. CSS are working on another version, but it's going to be so expensive to show it. So I looked briefly at some numbers over the deck through Compaq, through Hewlett-Packard phase, up to 2014. I'll talk about where we were in what I termed the moral outrage phase, when we realized we weren't getting increases. We went, this isn't fair. You've got to give us increases. You very quickly grow out of the moral outrage phase when you find it's not getting you anywhere, and you begin to build knowledge. What I termed there the from silly to savvy phase. Well, we probably weren't silly. In many ways, we might have been a little bit naive. But you learn very quickly, and you become reasonably savvy, to use that awful expression, about the ins and outs of some of the pension regulations. I'll talk about how we work through the system. I'll mention trustees, ombudsmen, lawyers, and even judges. Not that we've actually had anything to do with judges yet, but there are some judgments that are quite relevant to the overall pension scenario. I'll talk about where we are currently, and I'll look at what lies ahead. And as I said a moment ago, what lies ahead is, unfortunately, a certain amount of detail. So please bear with me, because you'll find, hopefully, at the end, that it was worthwhile listening to all this, and you leave here much wiser, much more knowledgeable than you come in. So, busy slide. Don't strain about reading the numbers. It's the story of Digital and Compaq over the period 1990 to 2001, and it's the story under Hewlett-Packard from 2002 through to 2014. I'm not going to hold my breath and think that 2015 is going to show a vastly different number. And as somebody said to me recently, if I owned a racehorse with that sort of form sheet, I'd probably have put it down years ago. Now, what I want to do is focus not so much on the numbers, although I will mention one or two. This 1998-99, where there was a 0 and a 4%, I think, I don't know for sure, and I don't want a big debate about it, but I think that 1998 was a kind of a glitch when Compaq took us over and kind of forgot to actually do anything, or it maybe wasn't convenient to do anything. And I think the feeling that 1999 was a kind of a 2-year composite increase, which would pretty much make, with the exception of 1995, the fact that we had significant increases under digital during that period. They were discretionary increases. I think we all knew that at the time. We may not have known the importance of the fact that they were discretionary increases and they were at the sole discretion of the company. But as I observed there, hey, what difference did that make? We continue to get, by and large, apart from 95 was a particularly bad year for the corporation, as I recall, probably because I left in 94. If you look at Hewlett-Packard, don't worry so much about the numbers. You can't get enthused about them, but don't worry so much tonight about the numbers. But look at some of these comments. 2008 was described in the letter that came along with the increase as an ex-gratia increase. That didn't mean much to me at the time. I mean, I know what an ex-gratia increase is, but it didn't dawn on me until much later that they were very careful to avoid calling that a discretionary increase. And in 2006, a very important year, a merger deed was signed. That was the year that the digital fund was merged into the Hewlett-Packard fund, where we had all sorts of assurances that everything would be fine. So let's take a look at it in a moment. So when we stopped getting these regular increases from digital, we were in the moral outrage phase. Surely this must be temporary. This isn't right. This must be an HP UK thing. The corporation would never behave like this. Just as digital had Uncle Ken to do the right thing, Hewlett-Packard had Bill and Dave. This wasn't the way Hewlett-Packard behaved. Meg, you're going to sort that out. You probably don't realize what's going on over here. It simply isn't fair. And the moral outrage stuff that was coming back from the company. Hey, we're making people redundant. How do you think they'd feel if they saw increases being given to pensioners? To which I would glibly say, well, they'd probably feel pretty much the same as they feel that if they knew that Meg Whitman got 17.6 million 2 years ago and 19.6 million the following year. Hey, that's an increase. The plan is underfunded. Yeah, of course it is. A lot of plans are underfunded these days. We all know why. Quantitative easing, yields and gills, poor performance in the stock market, the whole lot. I actually can't remember how much it's underfunded by. It's not to my mind, given Hewlett Packard Corporation's profit levels over the last number of years, an insurmountable amount. I admit it's much more than I place on a racehorse, but to me, it's not the be-all and the end-all. So that's the moral outrage phase. You realise after about a year and a half of bashing on the door and pleading to Meg and others, you're not going to get anywhere with this. You start studying, and you discover, you discover other companies are pretty much in our position. Some are worse, others are slightly better. You learn about the Pensions Act of 1995 and its subsequent amendment in 2005. Now, I'm sure you all know about the Pensions Act 1995 and the impact it's had on us. Let's just sort of recap that briefly. That was when they introduced the notion that contributions made after April 1997 would receive guaranteed increases. From memory, I think it was initially up to 5% per annum. They changed it in 2005 to bring it down to up to 2.5% per annum, or OPI, whichever was the lesser. So that is a significant piece of legislation. We also learned about the prudential judgment, and I'll come to that separately. That was a legal case involving Prudential and their pensioners. And we Googled furiously, and we learned about rulings by the Pensions Ombudsman, companies like Nalco, Scottish and Newcastle, GE, and so on. Some of them would be what I would term favourable to pensioners, others, and increasingly of late, are less favourable to pensioners. But you learn about all these sort of things. And then we really got into detail and began to learn about things called GN16 certificates. I'll tell you what that is in a moment, if you don't already know. We learned about the merger deed. We read the merger deed. I didn't read the merger deed in 2006. It wasn't offered to me. All I saw in 2006 at the time of the merger was the legal notice of the merger that said, we're going to merge the two schemes. Don't worry, it's all going to be fine. Nothing will change. It's going to be good. It was only when I read the merger deed I discovered I'd like to have read that at the time, and I'll tell you why. We learnt about the IDRP, the Internal Dispute Resolution Process, and we learnt about the Ombudsman, the Pensions Ombudsman in this particular case. So with all that knowledge, let's take a look at the merger of the two funds in 2006. That was a transfer without consent. Now that doesn't mean that we were rounded up in a park one night, gang raped and sent off to Siberia. Okay? It's a common thing where you're doing bulk transfers. And as you'd expect, there are certain reassurances that accompany such transfers, notably the GN16 and specific wording in the merger deed, protection for established customs. GN16, the key wording from the GN16, you can get all this on websites. You just need to Google GN16. The key wording, where it's the established custom for discretionary benefits or increases to be awarded under the transferring scheme, digital, there is good cause to believe that the award of discretionary benefits or increases in benefits will be, broadly, no less favourable. Looking good. Merger deed, clause 14. Guess what? Where it's the established custom for hey, you heard it before. Looking good. And then just to be clear, where discretionary benefits or increases in the transferring scheme believed to be awarded, we're going to set out a schedule in the merger deed to tell you exactly what they are. This is looking very good. Let's get to the clause. So, you get to the schedule. This is slightly incomplete at the moment. I want to build up to a particular point. You get to the schedule, you start reading it. There's lots of established customs. Widows and orphans, withdrawals from the scheme, all sorts of things. All there, protected. You get to the bit we're looking for. Discretionary pension increases. Rule 7 of the transferring scheme provides that pensions in payment may be increased if the founder thinks fit and acting on the advice of the actuary. Hey, 1990 to 2001 odd. Discretionary increases. We were getting them. Okay? And then you see that they show a table. The table below shows the recent history of whether discretionary increases have been granted, and if so, the size of any increase. Something odd about that. Think, where the hell is the years 1990 to 1998? Are these guys short of paper? Are they short of space? Is there some reason they're not showing this? Interesting. Or is it because that looks slightly less favourable? I mean, that's me being cynical. I'm not saying it was. I just happened to notice that the years 1990 to 1998 didn't seem to feature in the merger deed. And then I took a look at this particular year, 1999. And having a reasonably good memory, I thought, wait a minute, didn't we get a 4% increase that year? We did. The reason it's not shown there is because it wasn't awarded on the 6th of April, 1999. It was awarded at some other time during that particular year. That kind of worried me. So I read a little bit more. And I discovered, this wasn't in red ink on the actual deed, by the way, it's in red ink on this particular slide. Although not exercised as an established custom for the purpose of clause 14. Oh, right. That means that all those discretionary increases were not part of an established custom. Therefore, the protection afforded under the GN16 and clause 14 of the merger deed, where we were told that all our established customs will be protected, did not apply to discretionary increases. Okay? I hope that's clear, because that's quite important. So, I don't want to put words in your mouth and tell you what to say about that. You could take a view that that's fine, that's no problem. You could take a view that that wording doesn't seem very helpful to us. Or you could say, hey, if I'd been shown that deed, I don't think I'd have accepted it. I wouldn't have signed it. I would have argued the particular case. And I'll tell you an anecdote at this point in time. Does anybody know who this guy is? Will Smith, the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. When my son was at college, I discovered soon after he went there that he wasn't actually bothering to attend the lectures, but he was doing extremely well in his exams and his tests. And I said to him one day, how come you're actually not going to the lectures? Which, by the way, I want you to go to, but you're actually managing to get through all these tests. And he said to me, hey, it's easy. Do you remember when we used to watch the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air? I said, no, tell me more. He said, well, remember, the Fresh Prince wasn't going to his classes, and his dad asked him, how was he getting through all the tests? And he said, it's easy, Dad. You always answer C to multiple choice questions. So, without in any way wanting to influence your thinking, there you are. So, just to summarize where we're at. So at first glance, we had the legal notice of the merger. Nothing changes. Everything's going to be fine. Everything's good. No changes to the plan. We had the merger deed with all the assurances. We had the GN16. We had all the rights and established customs protected. But, gotcha, increases were never part of an established custom. Okay? So, at this stage, a little diversion. I've talked about the prudential case. I just want to break flow, if you will, for a moment, and give you the overview of that particular judgment. Because it is not directly relevant thus far to what we've been doing, but it's there in the background, and it's important that I think you know that it exists. The judgment was actually made in 2011. The whole shebang, if you will, began in 2005. And it all relates back to the 1995 Pensions Act, and particularly the 2005 amendment. Up to 2005, Prudential had been awarding fully uncapped RPI increases to their pre-97 contributors. Gee, I want to be a Prudential pensioner. In 2005, when the law changed and the maximum increase was made 2.5%, Prudential, not unreasonably in my view, turned to the pre-97 contributors and said, we'd like to cap those increases at 2.5%, if that's okay, so that you pre-97 guys are being treated the same as the post-97 guys. And the pensioners said, forget it, no way, we want the practice to stay as it is. Now you can agree that they probably had that right, or you could take the view that they might have been slightly greedy. In any case, this whole thing went all the way to the courts, went to the law, and the judge made a decision. He decided against them. And he emphasized that discretionary increases were, as it says, discretionary. And in essence, the company could do as it liked, as long as it wasn't behaving in a perverse and irrational manner. I've always wanted to behave in a perverse and irrational manner, but he decided Prudential were not behaving in a perverse and irrational manner because they were taking the interests of the pensioners into account. They weren't nailing it to the wall and saying, we're going to reduce your increases down to zero or throw you out of the company, whatever. They were being perfectly reasonable in his opinion. There was no estoppel argument which I wish I'd never put on the slide because somebody's going to ask me what it is, and I think it's when you've got a custom that's been going for a little while, it doesn't actually stop the company from changing it. And of course, other companies seized upon the ruling, put their own interpretation on it, and started using it to justify awarding zeros to all of their pre-1997 contributors. So it's an important judgment in that particular sense. It hasn't necessarily come directly into our particular case just yet. Why? I don't know, but I would point out to you, don't get discouraged. There was no merger involved in Prudential. There was no GN16 involved in Prudential. There was no merger deed, whatever. So I've just made you aware of that particular case, just by the by. Let's get back to what's been happening over the last year or so. There's been some complaints made about the company and about the trustees. And as I say, the one I'm kind of taking my information from is in the public domain. You can read it. Just Google Baines, Ombudsman, Hewlett-Packard, discretionary. Some combination of those words. You'll find all this. And complaints against the trustees start off in the internal dispute resolution. They go to the plan administrator, who will either accept the complaint or reject it. If it's rejected, you can go to the chairman of the trustees, who can accept it or reject it. If he rejects it, you can go to the ombudsman, and if the ombudsman doesn't feel you've got a case, well, if you want, you can take it to the High Court. Complaint against the company goes to the company and onto the ombudsman, the High Court. I mentioned TPAS in passing. That's the Pensions Advisory Service. That's not a competent body, it's an advisory body. The ombudsman kind of likes you to have gone to TPAS, first of all, but by and large, it's an advisory formality that you go through. And the nature of the complaint against all of against the trustees in the company, in no particular order, was, and I emphasize that these were opinions offered by a complainant. I'm not standing up here damning anybody. No proper annual review process existed in Hewlett-Packard UK. The UK company was simply acting on orders from corporate headquarters. Hey, do you have to give these guys anything? No, fine, don't give them anything. That was the opinion. The company therefore breached good faith by behaving in a perverse and irrational manner in not continuing what was seen to be an established custom. We hadn't seen the merger deed, remember, until quite recently. We hadn't seen clause 11. The legal notice should have clarified the issue of discretionary awards. To me, it was a bit like the cigarette industry. It's like giving us something in a packet that doesn't have a health warning. Oh, by the way, there's something in the deed that might impact you guys as far as discretionary increases is concerned. No mention of that. The GN16 was signed by the actuary and appeared to protect established customs. We all thought at the time that discretionary increases were part of our established customs. The trustees signed a document that said, no, they weren't. Merger deed clause 14 reiterated that protection. The schedule in clause 11, as I've said, deliberately undermined those protections, this is an opinion, by denying the existence of an established custom, and the trustees should therefore never have agreed to that. That was the nature of the complaints made. So I'm sure you're all dying to know what happened. So, here come the racing results. The IURP, the administrator refused the complaint, the chairman of the trustees refused the complaint. The ombudsman refused the complaint. There was no established custom for discretionary increases. Why? Let me come back to the why. The trustees were judged to have acted completely properly. They may well have, because there was no established custom to protect. HP UK did undertake proper reviews. HP was therefore not behaving in a perverse and irrational manner. Now, I guess when this judgment came through, there were probably some thoughts being aired privately. This may represent the more modest end of some of those particular comments. I don't know. Me personally, when I read the outcome of the Baines complaint, I was actually quite shocked by that. I thought it was, from what I saw, it was a well-argued complaint. So, where are we at? What now? Where are we heading? Let's be fair. Let's recognise that Hewlett-Packard have supported the plan, and they've supported it quite generously at times. But, you know, you could equally well say, yeah, but they're kind of obliged to. You know, you sign up for these things, you got to honour them. And you have to ask, are we actually being unreasonable? I've read some comments that said, yeah, we are, you know, times have changed, it's a bit difficult these days, we should be very glad for what we've got. Sure, okay, but it wasn't what I signed up for. So let's see if we're being unreasonable. Here's a little chart. RPI across the top, some big numbers there. Increases across the middle, some not so big numbers there. Big string of zeros with the occasional one. And along the bottom, in billions of dollars over the years, is the profit that Hewlett Packard as a corporation made. So let's leave aside the little 12.6 billion glitch in 2012. I think we all know what that related to. 2010, they made $8.7 billion in profit. They gave us zero. Are we being unreasonable? Hey, always answer C to multiple choice questions. I've seen people say on websites, they've said it to me, let's march on Bracknell, let's blockade it, let's march on the House of Commons. We must have a lot of public support. And, you know, to be frank, being pragmatic, I would say, I don't think we do. I think the public, whether it's being oriented by a certain political party of the left, or the media, or whatever else, I think, or perhaps it's because we deserve to be looked at on this way, people begin to think that pensioners are the problem. Pensioners are wrecking the NHS. Pensioners are buying up all those houses for buy-to-let investments that my children should be able to buy. Pensioners, they're the lucky generation. Hey, geez, when I was paying 50% interest rates on my mortgage, I didn't feel I was part of the lucky generation, you know? So I would say let's not bother marching on the House of Commons. Now, if you Google incessantly, as I'm afraid I do, you can read a lot of opinions on these matters about pensions. And there's a number of specialist law firms that offer their opinion on ombudsman's decisions, on new laws, regulations, whatever else. I read recently about, in the context of the Baines complaint, on 3 legal sites, they offered opinions that the ombudsman may not have been entirely correct as far as the established custom ruling was concerned. I got to think to myself, if a law firm is prepared to put that on a website, then there must be something in that. There must be something worth looking at. Now, I've got to respect the Ombudsman's decision. The Ombudsman's a trained professional. Lawyer, pensions, not pension savvy, whatever. I can't, and my colleagues can't sit there and say, they're wrong, they're wrong, they're wrong. There's only one thing you can do in these circumstances where there's a doubt being expressed. And that's what we're doing. We're seeking a counsel's opinion on that particular point, okay? And that will tell us if we have some leverage, some movement, some opportunity, or not, as the case may be. This is going to take some time. It won't be available on Monday. It won't be available in a week or two. It's going to take some months. So I would say to you, that's where we've come from. That's where we are. Don't get excited. Be patient. Set your expectations correctly. Don't go start spending the money. We don't have it. We may not get it. I don't know what the council is going to come back and say. Now, let me pose 2 questions, because somebody's going to ask me these 2 questions. What do I think the council is going to come back and say? Straight up, I don't know. That's why we went to seek a council's opinion. Because you can only draw so much of this from reading and drawing your own influences, which are always, of course, positive and designed to suit your view. So I don't know. Straight up, I have no clue. And somebody might ask me, well, if the council comes back and says, forget it, guys, is that it? Is that the end? Well, I would say it doesn't have to be. Because the root cause of all this problem is the 1995 Pensions Act. I don't think that act was ever designed to screw pre-97 contributors so that post-97 contributors could get increases. If it was, then the guy who drew it up was a clueless moron. And I think this is a wider issue. It's affecting many more people, many more companies than just ourselves. To my mind, this battle goes on and on and on. Okay? That's where we're at. That's where we're heading. I'd like you to do one thing for me now. When I put my hand up, I'd like you to offer a large, strong round of applause. That's A, because you feel sorry for me. This was a terrible presentation. B, because you think it was a brilliant presentation and you're much more knowledgeable. Or C, because like me, you think we've not been treated properly and you'd like to send a message through that applause to the company and anybody who's here represented.